Hi, it's Dwyer on Friday the 13th with some thoughts on the latest developments in Floyd Mayweather's attempt to lure Manny Pacquiao into the ring with him for a fight on May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo, at the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas. The Pacquiao team has responded to the invitation to Floyd Mayweather's tweet on Twitter challenging Manny Pacquiao by saying that the fight doesn't make economic sense unless a 45,000 capacity temporary arena is built on the strip in Las Vegas and the fight is held in late May. Apparently, it'll take that long to build the 45,000 capacity temporary arena. Let me make a few points. Close your eyes for a minute before I say another word. And just ask yourself, which opponent would generate the biggest pay-per-view audience for a Manny Pacquiao fight? Right? If you're representing Manny Pacquiao, forget Michael Kantz, forget Bob Arum. If you're representing Manny Pacquiao and he asked you which opponent would generate the biggest pay-per-view crowd for him, who does the public want him to fight? Who would that person be? If the answer is Floyd Mayweather, then this argument that the fight doesn't make economic sense is complete hogwash. Right? If it's Floyd Mayweather, then the fight makes economic sense. Right? Any other public narrative is spin. Let's hope it's spin to simply get better terms during a good faith negotiation and not an effort to evade the best, biggest draw that Manny Pacquiao could fight. Let me make another point. You know, I recently went to a college football bowl game, and outside the arena, there were a lot of scalpers selling tickets at way above face value, right? That's the free market at work, right? There are economic reasons why there are scalpers for events that have high demand, right? If, in fact, 45,000 people want to see the fight live in the arena, and there are only 16,000 seats, it seems to me that the fighters could actually get more by charging more. Isn't that the way exclusive events always work? Do you know of a big time event, whether it's a Super Bowl or a World Series, where the public isn't willing to pay more to be in the exclusive event? Right? You don't need more seats to make money if you can charge higher prices. And clearly, if this event, Pacquiao Mayweather or Mayweather Pacquiao, however you want to call it, if this event is the kind of event that can sell out a 45,000 capacity arena, then why can't you make up a significant chunk of that money by simply charging more? Keep in mind, you're never going to get, again, this kind of time pressure, right? Floyd Mayweather is going to be unavailable in June. We know why. This is a one-time event. You have a boxer going away. He wants to fight the adversary that the public wants him to fight, right? Everyone understands, too, that this is boxing in the moment. There is a new generation that we're slowly starting to turn our attention to, away from these two over 30 warriors, right? Many people are looking at younger guys like Saul Alvarez, right? The one constant in boxing is that there's always up and comers. A new generation is ready to be handed the torch. In fact, they're taking the torch, right? Saul Alvarez doesn't want to wait. He wants to fight Floyd Mayweather right now. So the moment is right for Pacquiao and Mayweather, right? This is their era. You wait a little bit more, and fans are going to start to ask questions about other younger fighters, right? I cannot tell you the number of messages I get about Brandon Rios. Quite frankly, the sport has other names, very talented fighters, who are just hoping to get more exposure because they know they have the talent to be big. Fighters like Miguel Vasquez, right? Tavoris Cloud. You have a whole group of fighters who literally have done the work. Adrian Broner. And now they just want the stage, right? So when you have this new guard, these older fighters need to get their act together and need to realize that Pacquiao Mayweather is now. It might not be in 2013, right? I mean, that's simply the reality. Let me make another point. If you have a timetable where the fight is not to take place until the end of May, knowing that in the beginning of June, Floyd Mayweather is going to be unavailable. And let's say that timetable involves you actually having to build a 45,000 capacity stadium in Las Vegas in a period of just a few months and have it up to code. Keep in mind, the people in Las Vegas have building standards, right? You're going to have to go in and you're going to have to approve the building, make sure that it conforms with public safety. Then if there is any delay, and I mean any delay, let's say the building is just delayed a month, and anyone who's ever presided over the building of a construction project knows that delays happen. There's an entire insurance industry based on construction delays, right? In fact, lawyers know there's an entire wing of litigation based on construction defects, right? And Lord knows there's an entire group of litigation based on unsafe conditions that guests end up being injured by. So all I'm saying is if there's any delay in the building of this arena, then that fight necessarily would then be delayed an additional 6 months. Because keep in mind, if Floyd Mayweather is going to be in the custody of the criminal justice system for 90 days, 3 months, then certainly when he gets out, he would want an additional 3 months to prepare for the fight, right? He's not going to have sparring partners in jail, right? He would want to obviously prepare for a huge fight like this, a legacy-making fight, a minimum of 3 months. And so there's too much risk involved, quite frankly, way too much risk in trying to build a stadium for a match in late May. So Manny Pacquiao's people, quite frankly, need to decide. In fact, I believe they have decided whether or not they want the fight. If they want the fight, then they can say, okay, let's fight at one of the premier boxing venues globally at the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas on one of the biggest days for boxing every year, and that's Cinco de Mayo, right? That's just that simple. Fight Cinco de Mayo weekend at the MGM Grand. Just say yes Floyd's people already have offered a 50-50 split. If Manny Pacquiao truly believes that he can beat Floyd Mayweather, all he has to do is say yes. Now, if there's an injury, and we're hearing about some terrible injury that Manny Pacquiao suffered against Marquez, and I have to be blunt, I didn't see a Vitaly Klitschko Lennox Lewis eye injury that Manny Pacquiao suffered at the end of that fight. In fact, I thought they interviewed Manny Pacquiao, and quite frankly, I didn't see any kind of terrible injury that would KO Manny Pacquiao for several months. But if that's the story they want to go with, then have Manny Pacquiao hold a press conference. Have him allow the camera to zoom in on his eye. Have him and his doctor then explain to the public why this injury is so severe that it's going to prevent him from fighting on May 5th, but would allow him to fight later that month. Let me ask you, have you ever had an injury where you knew with certainty you'd be unable to perform literally 2 or 3 weeks before you're able to perform? Come on. Who's buying this? My gut tells me that Bob Arum obviously would prefer to have Manny Pacquiao fight another Bob Arum fighter. Keep the profits in-house. If there's an upset or a close fight, keep the profits from the rematch in-house. That's what Bob Arum would prefer. My gut also tells me that the delays show that Manny Pacquiao himself has some hesitation about fighting Floyd Mayweather. Because quite frankly, the decision is Manny Pacquiao's, right? It's not Bob Arum's. Bob Arum is his promoter. Manny Pacquiao has his own team, right? Manny Pacquiao can instruct his promoter to make the most lucrative fight on the horizon for him. Let me just point out, the Floyd fight would generate the highest gross for Manny Pacquiao, right? The highest gross period. Not necessarily, I'll concede, the highest gross for either fighter, but the highest gross period, and certainly would be the legacy-making fight for both fighters, right? Manny Pacquiao already knows this. Let me also point out, too, we need to consider the time horizon when we talk about the biggest gross, right? Because we know from history, when people look at Muhammad Ali, immediately the mega fights, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, pop to mind. An argument can be made that now, decades after those fights, the memory of those fights is still paying Muhammad Ali, right? We give him VIP treatment because of fights that happened in the 1970s. Those fights, not other fights against unknown opponents that may have netted Ali considerable money, right? Manny Pacquiao and Floyd need to think about 20 or 30 years from now, when people see them walking down the street, right? If they have the kind of mega fight that Ali had against those guys, that Sugar Ray Leonard had against Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler, right? The mega fights are what pay the guy 20 and 30 years down the road. They're what make the legacy, right? Fight fans, in fact, will go back over 100 years. Jack Johnson's fans always keep in mind that Jim Jeffries fight, right? Who doesn't know about Max Schmeling against Joe Louis? Who doesn't know about Rocky Marciano against Joe Louis? About Ali against Liston, right? Pacquiao and Mayweather are looking at that kind of impact, that kind of event. We just saw the Joe Frazier obituary when he passed. I'm sure you couldn't get by the first two paragraphs without reading about Ali Frazier, right? This fight would be career defining. And you're telling me that one guy has offered the other guy May 5th as the date, Cinco de Mayo, in one of boxing's premier venues, and the response is some hogwash about the fight not being economically viable and that you need to build a 45,000 capacity arena between now and the end of May, and that fighter can't fight on May 5th but can fight later that same month? Come on. Come on. All I can say is something tells me that Manny Pacquiao, in the back of his head, understands that this fight could very well end bad for him, and he's hesitant. Let's hope in 10 days we don't get an announcement that Manny Pacquiao is either fighting someone he's already beaten, Cotto, whoever, or that Manny Pacquiao is fighting someone other than Floyd Mayweather the same month that a Mayweather fight could have taken place. Let's hope we don't get that, because then I think we'll understand what has just happened. I hope in the next 24 hours, since both teams are giving the other deadlines and a decision has to be made so that the fight can be promoted before May 5th, I hope in the next 24 hours the Pacquiao team reconsiders and gives the boxing public an Ali Frazier moment we've all been waiting for. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.